expedite this matter, ostensibly because democracy demands it, and that's the will. What does my colleague say to the fact that the Liberal Party has really curtailed and cajoled debate in this House over the last 2 weeks in order to further its own aims rather than having democracy as a whole in mind?
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent.
What I want to say about that is that when we're talking about democratic system, that's exactly what we are talking about today. We shall respect the right of the Member of Parliament to speak on an issue. That's what we're doing today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's all the time we have for debate right now. We're going over to statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 125th anniversary of a remarkable organization, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, that has served the most vulnerable in our region of Windsor-Essex since 1896. The Gospel of John tells us, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions. Today, the 35 employees and 200 dedicated volunteers of St. Vincent de Paul live those words to feed, clothe, and comfort residents in need. Whether through a food box delivery program or distributing 650 free beds per year, to operating store locations where residents can pick up gently used donated clothing and goods. The Vincentians embody neighbor looking after neighbor. President Dave Leslie says there is real pride in what we have been doing, serving generation after generation. Mr. Leslie, our community is proud of St. Vincent de Paul and so grateful for the service and the hope that you bring to our residents. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine driving the streets searching desperately for your child. Imagine waiting for a call late in the night telling you that your son or daughter has been found dead. It's a pain many of us cannot imagine. A couple of weeks ago, I hosted a very informal roundtable in my riding of Peterborough-Kawartha, listening to parents who have a child struggling with addiction or have lost a child to addiction. These are some of the quotes that deeply resonated with me. Stop assuming I'm a bad mom. No one told me what to do. I was waiting to be told how to fix it, but it's not about fixing them. Mr. Speaker, I chose to run for politics to bring better awareness and treatment for mental illness and addiction. The reality is, recovery centres are desperately needed, especially in my riding of Peterborough-Kawartha. But so is a social shift to understanding that addiction is treating pain. So I urge everyone in this House to replace judgment with empathy. And I urge the government to hold true to their election commitment and invest the $4.5 billion they promised for the Canada Mental Health Transfer.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I joined the 2022 Top 50 CEO Awards hosted by Atlantic Business Magazine, where my son-in-law Justin was recognized for the third consecutive time as one of Atlantic Canada's Top 50 CEO. I'm so proud of his success, including in leading Yellow Cap to transition their fleet to hybrid and electric vehicles and installing charging places in a number of properties to reduce the ecological footprint. I was also thrilled to see Chief Terry Paul of Member 2 First Nation and CEO of Member 2 Development win the CEO of the Year Award. Chief Paul and his community are both models to emulate and true trailblazers. Thanks to his leadership, Member 2 is one of the largest employers on Cape Breton Island. Having worked with him on the provincial level, I know his capacity and now in my capacity as a Member of Parliament, I know how big an impact he has had. I ask all members to join me in congratulating this year's award winners. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, last Saturday, there was a demonstration in the streets of Montreal against the Quebec government's Bill 96. This is, in fact, a new version of Bill 101 that was long overdue, given the accelerating Anglicization in Quebec. This Anglicization is something that anyone who has any logic can see, that anyone who cares about the future of the only French-speaking society in America would deplore it and wants to see measures taken to fight this. But not Saturday's anti-Bill 96 protesters. In their eyes, Bill 96 deserves the worst epithets, which I won't repeat here, and must be fought. But what was most shocking was that these demonstrators included several members of the governing party in Ottawa, and this sends a clear message. For this government, any measure to defend the French language in Quebec will always be too much, even when it comes from the only government that has the responsibility for it, namely the Quebec government. There's a word for that, Mr. Speaker. It's called colonialism.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's, Budget 2022 does many things to support people in many different ways. I want to thank the Minister of Housing for the incredible work he has done on the housing file. I could talk about housing co-ops. I could talk about a wide variety of things that's enabling Canadians to find a home. But, Mr. Speaker, what I want to highlight is the multi-generational home renovation tax credit. It is truly an amazing program that's going to make such a profound positive difference. For many Canadians, having generations live in one home is of great value. It's something which is greatly appreciated. And through this renovation credit, imagine up to $7,500 under a new program that's going to be put into place in 2023. I would like to thank the Minister of Housing and, in fact, the Prime Minister and the caucus for developing such a program that's going to make such a positive difference for all Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the past 2 years have been difficult for many organizations in Wellington, Halton Hills, especially ones that organize local events and fairs. The good news is that festivals and fairs, markets and shows are coming back this summer. Events like the Georgetown Highland Games, which is taking place on June 11th, which was established in 1975 and is one of the largest single-day Highland Games in North America. Other events are also happening in the upcoming months, such as Canada Day in Glen Williams, the Fergus Scottish Festival and Highland Games, the Acton Leathertown Festival, and Riverfest Elora. These events are not possible without the hard work and dedication of thousands of volunteers and organizers and sponsors. The people behind these events are the reason why, Wellington Halton Hills is such a great place to live, work, and raise a family. Mr. Speaker, let this be the summer of the great reopening.
The honourable member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since May 1947, the Canadian Rangers have played a critical role in the Canadian Armed Forces. They are proud to pass on their deep knowledge, which is critical to survival and navigation in some of Canada's harshest climates. They've supported the surveillance and sovereignty of Canada's north. They've enabled a military presence in more than 200 communities in the far north and in isolated and remote areas in Canada. They've helped Indigenous communities through challenges and crises. They've supported provincial, territorial, and local authorities in disaster response, search and rescue, and provided assistance through the pandemic. In this year, the year of the Canadian Ranger, let us honor their place in our nation's culture and military heritage as they celebrate 75 years, Mr. Speaker, of excellence and service to community and to country. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vancouver-Grenville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this weekend we saw another horrific mass killing in the United States, this time just across the border from Canada in Buffalo. But what was particularly chilling about this murder was the killer's ties to violent, far-right, white supremacist extremist ideology targeting African Americans. Canada is not immune from this threat. We saw this in the horrific killings in the mosque in Quebec City and again last summer in London, Ontario. We see extremist organizations continue to foment discord, hate, and threaten violence here in Canada. Yet there are many who question why we should focus our attention on ideologically motivated violent extremism perpetrated by the far right and by white supremacists. Mr. Speaker, this weekend's murders in the United States are a perfect example of why this focus is necessary. We must remain vigilant and set aside our differences to curb all forms of ideologically motivated violent extremism here in Canada. And I ask that all members of this House work together to ensure that Canadians know that we are united when it comes to recognizing and addressing the threat we face from white nationalism and far-right extremists. Thank you.
Just want to remind folks that during the statements by members that it's nice to have the conversations as low as we can so that people can get their great statements out. The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has threatened the long-term health and mental health of Canada's children and youth. Since the onset of the pandemic, healthcare organizations have seen a 2 to 3 time increase in children's hospital admissions related to self-harm, anxiety, eating disorders, and substance abuse. Currently, Canada ranks 30th out of 38 wealthy countries with respect to the health and well-being of children and youth. 62% of parents reported that their children's mental health has worsened throughout COVID. We cannot ignore these facts, sir. It's time to provide concrete policy solutions. Mr. Speaker, 48% of parents have sought out mental health services for their children for the first time as a result of the pandemic. In some jurisdictions, the wait time for children's mental health services can take up to 2 years. Mr. Speaker, that is 2 years too long. Budget 2022 fails to address the gaps in services for children and youth mental health. Mr. Speaker, this is an investment that we cannot afford to miss. For many, the effects of the pandemic will last a lifetime, but that doesn't mean we cannot help now. Our children and youth need us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This weekend, Toronto hosted the 51st Annual Juno Awards in person for the first time in years. Our nation came together to celebrate Canada's rich and diverse music history. With talent that shines on global stage, we can be proud of our Canadian artists. From Fan Choice Award to new awards like Contemporary and Traditional Indigenous Artists and Group of the Year, the Junos showcased Canadian artists and their successes in these challenging times. But of all the wonderful achievements on display, none may be more proud than my friend, Kitchener-Conestoga's own John Bailey, who earned his 8th nomination for Recording Engineer of the Year, an award he's already won twice. This coming off his Grammy Award win last month. Our community is proud of you. As a recording artist myself, I know musicians don't do it for just the applause, but I do invite members of this House to join me in congratulating and celebrating all our Canadian artists for their dedication, perseverance, and talent. Congratulations.
Again, I'll remind folks to keep their conversations down, please. Thank you. The honourable member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, Canada faces tightening fiscal pressures, ballooning debt, and inflation. Deficit and debt levels are so large that getting back to balance requires government not just to find efficiencies, but to actually do fewer things. The history of growth of government has not simply been one of government filling unmet needs. Very often, government has grown by displacing community, not-for-profit, and other private organizations. If we're going to reduce government expenditures while continuing to meet vital needs, Parliament needs to develop a strategy for revivifying strong communities and increasing the ability of extended families, charities, community organizations, and the private sector to offer opportunity and support to people in vulnerable situations. We need to replace big government with strong community. Strong communities don't just meet individual needs. They also draw those involved into a sense of common endeavor and attach service provision to intangible personal support. Too often, this government measures success by how much it is spending in a particular area. This way of measuring accomplishment incentivizes government growth at the expense of community response and doesn't actually measure positive outcomes for individuals. Mr. Speaker, the best way to reduce government spending is to replace government provision with something better.
Hear, 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 hear. The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
This Liberal government's recklessness has caused the price of everything to go up. People in my community are being forced to choose between buying nutritious groceries for their family or paying their utility bills. For a lot of families, summer sports are now a pipe dream due to the high price of gas. Never before have we seen gas prices this high, and this government continues to raise prices on gas, their taxes, with no end in sight. The Liberals seem pleased with the massive cost of fuel because it has helped to achieve the end goal of their carbon tax, to continuously raise taxes and increase the price of fuel so that Canadians are effectively beaten into submission and can no longer drive because, well, they can't afford it. The cost of living crisis is desperately impacting Canadians, and especially rural Canadians like those in my riding. They're looking to catch a break. They're looking for relief. They're looking for someone to stand up for their best interests. Well, Canada's Conservatives will continue to hold this Liberal government to account for their recklessness and mismanagement. We'll continue to fight to make life more affordable for all Canadians.
The honourable member for Saint-Laurent.
For the campaign. Mr. Speaker, I stand today to highlight an organization in the riding of Saint Laurent that brightens the day of hundreds of seniors. Place à la Marche is a seniors organization that promotes healthy living by creating exercising and socializing opportunities at our local mall, Place Vertu. It caters to all seniors but works primarily in English, being one of the only exercise groups that caters to the English-speaking community in the riding. The group meets 3 mornings a week to exercise, but they know how to have fun as well by celebrating their members' birthdays over lunch or dinner at least once a month. The group is successful at attracting new members and keeping Saint Laurent seniors happy and healthy because of the passion and work of their fabulous volunteers, including the president, Dominic Santini, the treasurer, Bernie Weinstein, Joanne Morrison, Percy Bannequet, and others. Today, they have come to join us here in Ottawa, and I'd like to take this opportunity to wish them a fantastic day on Parliament Hill and in Ottawa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's 2 largest political parties are meeting the threat of climate change with a woeful lack of ambition, action, and commitment. One party has disguised itself, trying to fit in among the environmentalists, but it can't hide the fact that it bought a pipeline with taxpayers' money, the costs of which have gone wildly over budget. And it can't hide the billions in loans it guaranteed or its subsidies to private oil companies as they profiteer off the backs of working families. And the other party? Well, it has buried its head in the oil sands, trying its best to ignore all the evidence. It is all but giving up trying to have a coherent plan on confronting the climate crisis, instead wanting to increase oil and gas production and build pipelines in all directions. Mr. Speaker, we must change our course, or Canada will be witness to larger and more powerful forest fires, extended droughts, flooding, and killer heat waves. The time to act is now.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-Lamatisse-Matane-Matapedia. Mr. Speaker, we are celebrating National Police Week between now and May 21st. I have the privilege of working closely with representatives of police forces at all levels, and I can tell you that I have great admiration and respect for those who work in this profession. These men and women who keep us safe and protected must wear many hats. In addition to being peace officers, they are often advocates, confidants, and ears to problems in our communities. The theme this week is understanding each other better, the police and the citizen, because it is these people on the ground who have allowed hundreds of arms to be seized, and they've had saved lives. Tens of officers from the lower Saint Laurent region worked all day and night last week to find a child who was abducted near our home in St. Paul, last fall. Together, let us honor their sacrifices and the risk they take every day to protect one of our most precious values, our democracy. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, 27-year-old Zachary Hartman of Exeter was tragically murdered this weekend in my hometown of Grand Bend. A friend described him as a calm, gentle person who never went looking for trouble, but that he would call out anything that he knows is wrong. This is not something that anyone expects to happen when they visit our small, friendly tourist town. We know arrests have been made, and we look for justice to be served. Our community grieves with the victim, and our most sincere condolences to the family. I would like to thank the OPP and Initiative Ed Police from Kettle Point, the paramedics and volunteer firefighters for their swift action. I was close by that evening and witnessed their immediate response. My heart goes out to all who knew Zachary. Losing a young Canadian to a sudden and senseless act of violence is not something any family or community wants. At times like this, we must remember the importance of mental health. We must also denounce the rise of violent crime, gang activities, and illicit drugs which ruin lives. I would like to ask anyone with information about the incident to call the OPP or Crime Stoppers. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, in 1993, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed that on May the 15th of every year, we observe International Day of Families. Families are the cornerstone of our society, shaping our country, our communities, and our homes. Mr. Speaker, as someone who comes from a family of 15, I always value a family above anything else. To my wife, my children, and my grandchildren, you are the greatest treasures in my life. You support me through my happiest times, and you pick me up when I'm down. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my family for their strength and support that they've always provided me. To my friends and my colleagues in this House, let us spend today and every day celebrating, supporting, and protecting the family unit. Treasures of the heart cannot be stolen.
Oral questions. Question orale. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, in Quebec, this weekend the masks came off. But instead of seeing people's smiling faces, I instead saw concern on their faces. The cost of living has reached incredible levels, and it hasn't spared anyone. The worst is still to come, according to experts. Throughout Quebec and Canada, gas is reaching record prices, and the Liberal NDP government seems to like the situation, Mr. Speaker. When will this Prime Minister let families get a break during this inflationary crisis? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand that the cost of living is a key issue for Canadians. And we know that Canadians, including Quebecers, understand the importance of climate action. Our budget includes a range of measures to reduce the cost of living. For example, dental care, doubling the help provided by the first-time home buyers plan, a one-time $500 payment. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, people are tired of that kind of answer. Do you want to know what the Liberals really think of this increase in the cost of gas? Well, a Liberal member said there needs to be a bit of pain. That's the goal. For the Prime Minister and his cabinet, the more expensive gas is, the better. And too bad if it hurts Canadians. That's the truth. Would the Deputy Prime Minister come to a gas station with me to tell workers that she will help them to actually pay for their expenses? Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians are smart. We know that Canadians understand that inflation, including the cost of gas, is a global phenomenon caused by the pandemic, by Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, and by the Chinese COVID-0 policy. However, we know that this is hurting Canadian families. That is why our government took action. For example, we increased OAS. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. On a different topic, on Friday, the Supreme Court recommended that Parliament adopt legislation to ensure that when someone commits a violent crime while in a state of extreme intoxication, they can't use that state as an excuse in their defense. Most victims of that type of crime are women, so the Supreme Court ruling could have real consequences for victims. We are ready to collaborate with the government. Will the Minister of Justice present legislation within the next few days to correct the situation? The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to making our criminal justice system protect our communities, respect victims, and hold offenders responsible, while also respecting charter rights. We are closely studying the ruling in order to understand its effects on victims and criminal law. I would like to specify that Friday's ruling does not apply to the majority of cases involving someone who commits a criminal offense while intoxicated.
For Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court of Canada on Friday ruled that defendants accused of violent crimes such as homicide and sexual assault can use self-induced extreme intoxication as a defense, striking down a federal law supported by women's advocacy groups. Sexual assaults remains one of the most underreported crimes according to the Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics. This ruling is taking us backwards. When is the government going to respond and put the needs of victims first?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said in French, our government is unwavering in its commitment to ensuring that our criminal justice system keeps communities safe, respects victims, holds offenders to account, all the while upholding charter rights. We're carefully reviewing this decision, Mr. Speaker, to determine its effect on victims as well as on the criminal law. It's critically important, though, Mr. Speaker, to emphasize that Friday's decision does not apply to the vast majority of cases involving a person who commits a criminal offense while intoxicated.
The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, the government continues to provide inadequate answers to the real questions facing Canadians. We know that the current system is not set up to protect victims. The lack of self-reporting, victim fear, and psychological stress are only a few of the reasons why this system is failing. Women's advocacy groups, legal experts, and many others are concerned with this Supreme Court ruling. Mr. Speaker, our job is to protect victims, not add to their burdens. When will this government introduce legislation to close the loophole?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Speaker, as I've said a number of times publicly, we are investing in victims and protecting victims within our system. They're always at the forefront. Mr. Speaker, this decision came out on Friday. It does propose a few ways forward. We are studying those ways forward in a responsible manner, Mr. Speaker, in order to get to a response that protects victims and eliminates gaps in our criminal law.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, there were so many Liberals at the protest against Bill 96 on Saturday that it almost seemed like you were at a Liberal convention. There were the members from Montréal, Saint-Laurent-Vimy, Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel, Vaudreuil-Soulanges, Lac-Saint-Louis, Pierrefonds-Dollard, Dorval, Lachine, LaSalle. It was like a Liberal party, Mr. Speaker. And this raises real questions. Is this government's official position right now to go to war against Bill 96 in Quebec? And if not, will the Deputy Prime Minister tell this gang of MPs to mind their own business? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. No? No?
Okay, l'Honourable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the government tabled Bill C-13 to strengthen French not just in Quebec, but throughout Canada. And that is exactly what we will do, while respecting all minorities, Mr. Speaker. Unlike the Bloc Québécois, our members are not handcuffed. They can protest according to their point of view, unlike members from the Bloc Québécois. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, the federal Liberals are waging a war on French on two fronts. First of all, you have the group of MPs who are protesting Bill 96, and then ministers who have their own Bill C-13, which wishes to forbid a key measure in Bill 96, which is to place federally regulated businesses under a charter of the French language. So they either want to prevent Quebec from adopting Bill 96, or they want to reduce its effects and protect English in the workplace. So ultimately, are the Liberals defending French or the Anglicization of Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Heritage. Well, what the Liberals are doing is defending both official languages, Mr. Speaker. And unlike the Bloc Québécois, our Liberal members are proud, and our Quebec MPs are no less Québécois than members of the Bloc Québécois, even though they don't want Quebec to separate. We are just as Quebec as proud of Quebec, and we love Quebec just as much as members from the Bloc Québécois.
Je pense que son makeover l'a bien servi, là.
I think the colleagues' makeover went well.
Burnaby.
L'indécence atteint maintenant des sommets au Canada.
Indecency is reaching a record in Canada because big oil companies are raking in the profits and giving their CEOs millions in bonuses. And yet, this government thinks that it's a good idea to give them even more public money.
Meanwhile, people who are already struggling are now paying more than $2 per liter at the pump. When will this government stop subsidizing polluters? When will it help real people who are paying double at the pump and for these subsidies? The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our government has committed to end all subsidies to the oil and gas sector. By 2023, that is a strong commitment. We will do that. And I would also like to say that carbon capture is a key measure in order to reduce emissions throughout the country in sectors like aluminum and steel.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Well, Mr. Speaker, gas prices are reaching record highs across the country, and costs are only expected to increase into the summer. Canadians are frustrated. After years of a pandemic, many have plans to travel across Canada and visit loved ones. But the high cost of gas is ending that dream. While Canadians are getting gouged at the pumps, big oil and gas are making record profits. Then Liberals are handing over more public money to support that profit. How about Liberals be accountable to Canadians? When will this government make big oil and gas pay their fair share?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we already do that. And Mr. Speaker, our government has put forward the most ambitious climate action put forward by any Canadian government in history, including a price on pollution, which is the most economically effective, the most powerful way to get our emissions down. And I want to just remind Canadians that we are committed to eliminating fossil fuel subsidies, and that will happen by 2023, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, gas prices are at record highs and Canadians are suffering as other G7 leaders take action on high gas prices. When given a chance to support a Conservative motion to give Canadians a break at the pumps by dropping the GST on fuel, this Prime Minister and his spend-EP Liberals voted against it. Now, this is the same Prime Minister that said 4 years ago in Vancouver that high gas prices were exactly what he wanted. Does the Prime Minister stand by what he said in Vancouver 4 years ago, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, I think everyone in this House needs to be mindful of the fact that none of us should be doing Vladimir Putin's work for him. And that means we all need to recognize the reality and be honest with Canadians about the reality that inflation, including the higher price of fuel, is a global phenomenon. It is being driven by Vladimir Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. It is being driven by China's zero COVID policy.
Indeed. Order. We made it to number 11. The Honourable Member of Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Europe has cancelled fuel taxes amounting to over 20 billion euros. In contrast, this government has decided to gouge $2 billion more in fuel taxes from Canadians. Now, the Minister of Finance says that inflation is a global phenomenon, but when her government has a tool to curb one of inflation's main causes, she sits on her hands. This is the only government in the world increasing fuel taxes. Will the minister pay attention to what's happening around the world and provide Canadians the same relief from inflation?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things that makes the price on pollution such an effective economic mechanism to drive down our emissions is that the money goes back to Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, restart there.
So, Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the price on pollution is such an effective economic mechanism to bring down our emissions because because the money goes back to Canadian families. The member for Calgary knows that in Alberta, a family of 4 will receive up to $1,079. In Ontario, the province that I represent, a family of 4 will receive $745. In Saskatchewan, it is $1,100, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, the objective of Canada's carbon tax is to make gasoline more expensive. The Liberal member for Halifax even said there needs to be pain at the pump. Well, mission accomplished. The difference in pump prices between southwest New Brunswick and northeast Maine after the exchange rate is 50 cents per litre. That's $2 in my riding and $1.50 in Calais, Maine. Since New Brunswick's oil refinery supplies both country with pump gasoline, that difference is all tax. So why aren't Liberal ministers and the Deputy Prime Minister taking credit for making energy more expensive? It's precisely what they want.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
I would say a couple things to my honourable colleague. The first is, as he should know very well, it's President Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine that has driven up gas prices around the world. We are certainly working to ensure and have instructed the Competition Bureau to monitor the situation to ensure there's no collusion here. But with respect to the price on pollution, I would be quite happy to have a conversation with the member so he understands how it works. The average family gets more money back than they actually pay in the price on pollution. It is an effective way to reduce emissions, but do so in a manner that maintains affordability for all Canadians.
Just need to remind folks that when somebody's answering online, they can't hear the heckles. The honourable member from Saskatoon West.
I don't think Putin's invasion affects Maine, but Mr. Speaker, gas is going for $1.88 in Saskatoon today. People have to choose between filling up their gas tanks or putting food on the table. These are hardworking Canadians that commute to work, take their children to hockey, and cook meals for their families. Postponing the increase in the carbon levy is absolutely within this minister's control. She's clearly refusing to act. As a result, she's directly cutting the purchasing power of Canadians and contributing to increasing the cost of everyday goods. Mr. Speaker, will the minister offer immediate relief to all Canadians by rolling back the carbon tax increase on gasoline?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, the member from Saskatchewan began his remarks by saying he didn't think that Putin had an effect on Maine. And what I would like to underscore for all members of this House is Putin's illegal war in Ukraine is having a devastating effect on the entire global economy. It is raising the price of energy for everyone. It threatens to create a famine in the world. That is what we need to be focused on. And when it comes to the great people of Saskatoon, a family of 4 in Saskatchewan will get $1,101 back.
The honourable member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, gas prices reached yet another record high this weekend, with many in Ontario and across Canada paying more than $2 per litre. The pileup does not stop there, with drivers being urged to brace for yet another increase. According to a gas prediction website, prices are expected to reach $2.15 per litre for most Ontario cities by Victoria Day. While experts are urging Canadians to stay home and stop driving, countless Canadians across the country, including many in my riding, have no choice but to drive for their livelihood. What does this government say to hardworking Canadians who are being gouged by government inaction?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, like the member opposite, I too am a member of Parliament for the great province of Ontario. And that's why I am happy to share with the constituents of the member opposite and with my own constituents the fact that our price on pollution is not only economically effective in driving down emissions, it puts money back in the pockets of Canadian families. In our province of Ontario, the average family of 4 will get $745 back, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
At well over $2 a litre, British Columbians are paying the highest gas prices in North America. It now costs over $150 to fill up a minivan, more than a day's wages for many Canadians. They are worried and struggling to make ends meet. Other jurisdictions have responded by cutting fuel taxes, but this Liberal NDP coalition voted against a Conservative motion to cut gas taxes and then made matters worse by raising the carbon tax. When will the Liberals finally cut gas taxes and give Canadians a break at the pumps?
Yeah, give them a break. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would offer to the honourable colleague that to suggest that the rise in gas prices is the result of action on climate change is just ridiculous and shows that the Conservative Party still does not understand both how global economics work, but also how addressing climate change is important. Energy consumers around the world are experiencing a rise in petroleum products, and Canada is not alone on this front. As we see, it is the illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is driving global energy prices. We are working very hard to ensure that we can stabilize those prices. But consistent with that, we are continuing to fight climate change. And as the honourable member should know, the average Canadian family gets more money back than what they pay.
I also want to remind folks, turning your mic on and trying to heckle online is not acceptable either.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, there were many Liberal Party MPs at Saturday's protest against Bill 96. Of course, it was their right to be there as Quebecers, but it does raise a question. These members need to understand that language laws that protect French's future as the only official and common language of Quebecers, they need to understand that these laws are under Quebec jurisdiction. As federal members, this is none of their business. What does the minister think of this behavior? The Honourable Minister of Heritage. Mr. Speaker, is my colleague saying that Liberal members from Quebec are less Quebecois than he is? Is he trying to say that they don't have a right to express their opinion? Is he trying to say that it's not okay to ask questions, that it's not okay to reflect the opinions of some of their constituents? Are they less Quebecois, or do they have the right to express their opinion just like other Quebecers? The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, you might think that Ottawa would understand that the only threatened official language in Canada is French. I would have thought that everyone understands that, but apparently not for Liberal Party MPs who protested a Quebec law which aims to protect French. By opposing the defense of French in Quebec, these members are ultimately defending the Anglicization of Quebecers. That is not okay. Will this government commit to not prevent the application of the French language charter in Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, all Liberal MPs, including the 35 Quebec MPs, understand that French is threatened and that we need to do more, and we are doing more, thanks to the excellent work of the Minister for Official Languages. Not only are we aiming to protect French in Quebec, we are also trying to protect French outside Quebec. But unlike the Bloc Québécois, we actually care about linguistic minorities outside Quebec, as well as the Anglophone minority within Quebec. And a Quebecer is a Quebecer regardless of the language that they speak. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Well, since we're talking about that, Mr. Speaker, these Liberals say they want to defend minorities, but they appointed a unilingual Anglophone Lieutenant Governor in New Brunswick. According to the courts, this appointment was unconstitutional, but the Liberals are saying they're going to appeal that ruling. They want to protect their right to make unilingual Anglophone appointments in New Brunswick, the only bilingual province in Canada. The minister, does she even realize that she's from New Brunswick? Does she agree with the decision to appeal? Does she agree, like as we do, that this is an affront to Acadians? The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Our government is committed to protecting French throughout the country. The decision to appeal regarding to the court's decision does not affect our commitment to protect and promote linguistic duality, including the modernization of the Official Languages Act. In future, we're making a commitment to appoint bilingual lieutenant governors in New Brunswick.
For Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety has claimed numerous times that he invoked the Emergencies Act after a recommendation to do so by law enforcement. Last week, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki told committee that, quote, there was never a question of requesting the Emergencies Act, end quote, and that she could think of no other law enforcement body requesting it either. Can the minister tell Canadians what law enforcement asked him to invoke the Emergencies Act?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me clarify again for my honourable colleague what the Commissioner said. She said, what I can say is that the Emergencies Act did give us the tools that we needed to get the job done quickly. She said, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you from an RCMP perspective, for example, that we were in the midst of trying to enforce at Coots, and we could not enforce because we couldn't access tow trucks. Those are just two very clear statements of the RCMP Commissioner who explained how it is that the Emergencies Act helped to restore public safety.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that still doesn't answer the question. The RCMP Commissioner may have said it was necessary, but she clearly refuted what the minister's claim was, that they had recommended it. On May 2nd, the Minister of Public Safety stated in this House, quote, at the recommendation of police, we invoked the Emergencies Act, end quote. On April 28th, he further stated, quote, it was on the advice of law enforcement that we invoked the Emergencies Act, end quote. Can the minister back up these statements by answering my question, or will he admit that these statements were false?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'm just finally glad that on Tuesday, May 16th, my honourable colleague from the Conservative Party admitted that the RCMP Commissioner's testimony was that the Emergencies Act was necessary in his own words, Mr. Speaker. Finally, we've been waiting months for that admission. Mr. Speaker, we invoked the Emergencies Act to protect Canadians. We invoked it, and we will continue to participate now in the review exercise in a way that is transparent. Thank you.
Order! Ah, Lord. Ah, Lord. Order. I'm not allowed to editorialize on these things. Order!
The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, regarding the illegal protests in Ottawa, the Minister of Public Safety said on May 2nd, on the advice of law enforcement, we evoked the Emergencies Act. That's what the Minister said. Then last week, the RCMP Commissioner said, and I quote, there was never a question of invoking the Emergencies Act. So the question is simple. Who's telling the truth? The Minister or the RCMP Commissioner? I think I trust the Commissioner a lot more. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, as I've mentioned several times now, the Commissioner's statement was that there were powers in the Act over law enforcement agencies that acted as motivators or disincentives for people coming back. Therefore, the Emergencies Act gave us the tools that we needed in order to do the job quickly. And finally, today, Monday, May 16th, the Conservatives have recognized that.
Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, last year, Chantal Moore, an Indigenous woman, was fatally shot by police during a wellness check. The inquest begins today, and we hope that her family and community get the answers that they deserve. On this government's watch, police violence against Indigenous and racialized people continues to cost lives. The government is not moving fast enough with police reforms that include Indigenous oversight. When will this government act to reform policing and make sure that what happened to Chantal never happens again?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for this important question and share our sympathies with Chantal, her family, and as well for his ongoing advocacy. I agree with him wholeheartedly. We need to accelerate our work when it comes to reconciliation, which does include more Indigenous representation, not only in the oversight of the RCMP, but in the RCMP itself, Mr. Speaker. And I assure him and all members of this chamber that we are working very diligently with the Commissioner of the RCMP, not only to do those things, but to make sure that we implement all the calls to justice as part of the meaningful work of reconciliation. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
The Nunavut Impact Review Board recommended that this government reject Baffinland's Phase 2 proposal. They said the adverse effects cannot be prevented. Several Nunavut communities have said that narwhal migrations have changed because of the Mary River project. The Mitimatalik Hunters and Trappers organizations have been trying to meet with current ministers for months. Marine mammals and wildlife are at risk. The livelihood of Nunavummiut are at risk. Will this government assure Canadians that the most impacted community will be heard by requested ministers?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for her important question. As she might know, we launched today the consultations on the first ever national adaptation strategy, which will clearly focus on the most impacted Canadians, which includes, obviously, Indigenous communities across the country and certainly racialized communities and the poorest among us. We are at the very beginning of the consultation, but I can assure her and this chamber that the consideration of Indigenous people, the people of the North, the Inuits, will be taken in great consideration as we elaborate this national strategy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Whitby.
Mr. Speaker, today is a great day for Canada and our Parliament buildings. The design competition for Block 2, directly across from Parliament Hill, has concluded, and the winner was announced today. The winning design brings together the past, present, and future, mixing heritage-designated buildings with modern landscaped courtyards and a public square facing the Peace Tower. The preservation of heritage features and Indigenous considerations are at the heart of the chosen design. Can the Minister for Public Services and Procurement please tell us more about this very exciting design? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Public Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Whitby for this important question. Block 2 is one of the most prominent city blocks in our country. I was pleased to announce today the winner of the design competition.
Order. Hold on a second. I mean, all of us want to hear what's happening here on the precinct. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Whitby for this important question. Block 2 is one of the most prominent city blocks in the country. I was pleased to announce today the winner of the design competition is the team consisting of Zeidler Architecture of Toronto in association with David Chipperfield Architects of London, UK. Congratulations. I wish to thank all design bidders for your participation, and special thanks to the jurors and the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada for your hard work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, boaters in my riding have been impacted by the Public Safety Minister's decision to suspend service at several small vessel reporting offices of the CBSA. Boaters are now required to travel many kilometres out of their way to check in. The additional travel will have a significant cost on an individual's wallet, hundreds of dollars per trip with these gas prices. This accomplishes nothing but punishment for law-abiding Canadians. Will the minister reverse this decision and restore service so that my residents can enjoy the summer on their small boats?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, first I want to thank my colleague for the question, and we are, of course, in the process of opening up a number of smaller ports of entry. We've made tremendous progress. Travel and trade are heading back in the right direction, finally, as a result of the good work of Canadians, and we will continue to work with all members in this chamber so that smaller ports of entry are able to facilitate travel throughout the summer. We're looking forward to making that progress in due course. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, 2 small vessel CBSA reporting sites in my riding have been closed since the start of the pandemic. One at Smuggler's Cove in Niagara-on-the-Lake and the other at the Greater Niagara Boating Club in Chippewa. Their continued closure is causing all kinds of issues for Canadians and American boaters who use the Niagara River to cross into Canada and the United States. While there is one reporting station in Fort Erie at Miller's Creek Marina, we need to meet the demands of our boating community by having all sites in Niagara reopened. When will this happen?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, once again, as I've just reported to this chamber, we've made significant progress in opening up a number of smaller ports of entry that involve vessel travel, and we look forward to having more good news on that front. In the meantime, we're very happy to see that trade and travel are increasing, and we'll continue to make sure that we make that progress in cooperation with all members in this chamber. Thank you.
The honourable member for Essex.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and still no answer. Does the Prime Minister know that boaters still have to travel long distances to register their boats upon returning to Canada, or is he too focused on spending time on his surfboard in Tofino? Boaters are concerned that as the season heats up, they will be forced to converge upon a small number of vessel reporting sites, which will cause chaos and safety issues for months, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when will the government tell the CBSA to reopen all 400 reporting sites?
Time to reopen.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, once again, just to provide members of this chamber with some concrete numbers on the progress that we've made, we have seen the reopening of 86 small vessel ports, 47 small airports, and 4 land ports. And I know that my honourable colleagues across the aisle are very anxious to see more open, as are we, and we're working closely with CBSA, the Ministry of Transport, and all colleagues on this side to make sure that we can get trade and travel going again. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kildonan and St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is Canadian communities along the Great Lakes heavily depend on boaters being able to cross the water from the U.S. Pre-pandemic, there were 400 such check-in points. Now there's 84. 400 to 84. Some are having to travel 76 kilometers out of the way rather than just 800 meters across the river. It's been disastrous for local communities, and all we've got from Liberal ministers is lip service and excuses for lack of will and lack of effort to get this done. Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberal minister get this done for Canadians and fix this problem, open the check-in points? Let's go! No
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we're going. Like I said, we've reopened 86 small vessel ports, 47 small airports, and 4 land ports. That's not lip service, Mr. Speaker. That's actual reopening progress in action. We'll continue to work with my colleagues and all members across this island in this chamber to get trade and travel going again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, with the increase in shootings in the Montreal area, Quebec police forces are asking for greater power to increase arrests. One of these powers, which only Ottawa can give them, is to create a registry of criminal organizations. This would allow the police to arrest any individual on the spot who can be proven to be a member of a recognized criminal group. Mr. Speaker, there is a war between criminal gangs in Quebec, and the population is expecting the federal government to actually do its job. When will the minister equip the police with a registry of criminal organizations? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I would like to reassure my colleague that the short answer is yes, but first of all, we deplore the loss of human life in the Buffalo mass shooting, and we are wholeheartedly hand in hand with survivors. These senseless violences were motivated by hate and violence against black people. Even if this happened in the States, Canada is not sheltered from racism and armed violence in our communities. We still have a lot to do in order to eliminate armed violence, and we will do good work in the field with all MPs. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Avignon-la-Métis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, whilst the police wait for more resources to fight gun violence, the least we can do is to use the resources we already have. At the moment, there are RCMP officers deployed at the border, not to fight against gun trafficking, not to dismantle criminal networks. No, get this. They are there to welcome migrants at Roxham Road. Does the Minister of Public Safety think it is time to shut down Roxham Road finally by suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement and giving more powers to the RCMP to finally focus on weapons? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe in an immigration system that is just and fair, that protects refugees' rights. It was just last year that we collaborated with Mr. Legault's government to start a program for a path for refugees that contribute to strengthening our economy, and we will work together with policing bodies, the SQ, for example, to ensure that we have a good service for our borders. And the Bloc has to support our border investments. Thank you.
Member for Thornhill.
Massive lineups at airport security, passengers being held on the tarmac, missed connections, costly delays, outdated COVID testing, and many Canadians still can't even travel. Canada's airports are getting a reputation, and it's not a good one.
Disaster.
The reason, according to the minister, Canadians have forgotten how to travel and they are out of practice.
Unbelievable.
Is the minister going to take responsibility for his government's failure, or will he continue to blame Canadian travellers?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, it's not a surprise that a Conservative Member of Parliament repackages and misinforms the Canadians about what I said. Having said that, it is really important today to acknowledge the good news. Mr. Speaker, more and more Canadians are travelling, and that's good news. Having said that, we're seeing that the surge for demand to travel is putting a lot of pressure on our airports, on our security system. We are making sure that we increase resources. We're working with airports. We're working with airlines to address this issue. This is a priority, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
And the Oscar goes to
the Honourable Member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Wait times at Pearson International Airport are abysmal, and the Minister of Transport has the audacity to blame travellers. His words, Mr. Speaker, blaming the customer for failed operations is never okay. The rules and restrictions are ridiculous and out of date. The ArriveCan app is a mess, and again, we see zero accountability from the Liberals. Tourism needs to recover for both our economy and our mental health. So my question is, what is the Liberals' plan to manage these out-of-control wait times other than to blame Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians, especially those who work in the tourism industry, saw which government stood by them during the difficult period of the pandemic. They saw how the political opposition from the Conservatives were against providing support to those who needed it. Mr. Speaker, we will always be supporting our tourism sector. We're all excited about the traveling season coming up. Canadians are traveling. We are doing everything we can to address these lineups, Mr. Speaker. We are working with airports, we're working with the airline sector, and we're working with CATSA to address these issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, at the Industry Committee, we heard from small and medium business leaders the impacts government's policies are having on tourism operators' bottom lines. After 2 years of border closures, cycles of lockdowns, labour shortages, and rising inflation, we heard that tourism small businesses are now concerned that things like ArriveCan, immigration inefficiencies, and airport worker shortages will discourage tourists. Why do the Liberals continue to double down on policies and ineffective processes that say to the world, Canada is closed for business?
That's right. Wow.
The Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Let's look at the facts. Only weeks ago, 1 million arrivals in Canada in 1 week. In Budget 22, $20 million to increase Indigenous tourism, $4.8 million for Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. Canadians are traveling in independent tourism. Numbers are up. Mr. Speaker, Canada's open for business. The Conservatives don't like it, but we sure do.
Order.
Order. I want to be able to hear what's going on here.
The Honourable Member for Madawaska-Restigouche. Mr. Speaker, small and medium-sized businesses in New Brunswick know that our government is protecting them. Last week, I was proud to tell 4 businesses in my riding of Madawaska-Restigouche that we were investing over $1.6 million in projects that are creating local jobs and helping these businesses innovate and grow. Could the Minister responsible for ACOA tell the House more about how our government is supporting the economic recovery in Atlantic Canada and across the country as well? The Honourable Minister for Official Languages and ACOA. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my friend, the member for Madawaska-Restigouche, for having pointed out how our government is creating jobs and supporting growth in New Brunswick. Through the Jobs and Growth Fund, we are investing in businesses that are creating jobs and ensuring that communities like Saint-François-de-Madawaska and Grand Barachois are included in our economic recovery. We know that these businesses are the backbone of local economies, and HoC and our government will be there to support them every single step of the way. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Nazifa was a 10-year-old girl whose father worked for the Canadian Armed Forces in Kandahar. She was murdered by the Taliban waiting to come to Canada. A veterans group volunteer helping Afghans blamed an inadequate evacuation effort by the Canadian government and delays in immigration processing for the girl's killing. There are thousands more in this situation. Will the minister show some humility and implement the Conservatives' ask for single journey travel documents to avoid the processing delays, or will he just resort to more partisan attacks?
Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the honourable member's question, and Nazifa's killing was a tragedy that I think on every day as we seek to develop policies that will expedite the arrival of more Afghan refugees. But with great respect, his suggestion that we issue a single journey travel document will not achieve what he says it will achieve. What he's seeking to do is to have the Canadian government issue a document that will grant permission for a person to enter a third country. Third countries remain in control of the entry requirements into those countries. We are having conversations with partners in the region, as well as organizations on the ground, to secure safe passage for as many Afghans as possible so they can achieve a second lease on life through one of the most substantial refugee commitments of any nation in the world.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, as we can see in various news reports, the Taliban have taken control of the Afghan population in a radical way. The government has abandoned our Afghan interpreter friends. We are talking about people who have served Canada for years with our armed forces, people who are very well known to our military and who already are trusted by the Canadian authorities, given that this is a matter of life and death. Can the minister explain why he cannot come to, or they cannot come to Canada now whilst their refugee claims are being processed? The Honourable Minister for Immigration.
Remind the honourable member that in fact many of those who have served Canada have already arrived in our country. Just last week, the most recent charter plane carrying approximately 330 government-assisted refugees who've come to Canada as a result of their service to our effort in Afghanistan during our mission there. We're going to continue to do whatever we can to make sure that we deliver on our commitment to resettle 40,000 Afghan refugees, which I would remind all members of this House remains one of the most substantial commitments of any nation in the world. There is much work to do, but the situation on the ground in Afghanistan is heartbreaking, and that's why we've made such a substantial commitment.
Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, Afghan interpreters are dying. Many have arrived. 31% have arrived that this government assured us would come. And yet, this government gave a standing ovation just last week to the immigration minister. Shame on them. This government called an election as Kabul was falling. People were dying. People continue to die. Shame. What do we get? Partisan rhetoric from the immigration minister. Will this immigration minister and the government put aside their partisan rhetoric and get vulnerable Afghans to Canada now?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
With great.
Okay, hold on. We're having internet problems here with the Honourable Minister's connection. I'm just hoping, all right, I think I got the Minister back, the Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, with great respect to the honourable member, there are now more than 13,000 Afghan arrived in Canada and are safe because...
All right, I guess we're going to go to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, unfortunately.
Monsieur le Président, I want to say if it was a matter of will, there would be 40,000 Afghan refugees here already. But the reality is that in every step of the way, we are facing obstacles, facing us that we were not present in other resettlement efforts. There's a number of factors that we do not fully control, such as safe passage out of Afghanistan and our ability of Afghans to want to resettle, to leave the country. We are committed to 40,000 and we will bring 40,000 Afghan refugees to Canada, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, as we emerge from the pandemic, our focus is on creating inclusive and sustainable economic growth and making life more affordable for Canadians. In order to do this, we know that we need to support and modernize our traditional industries, such as the auto and aerospace industries, while also laying the groundwork for Canada to become global leader in new and emerging sectors, including EV, quantum computing, AI, and clean tech. Can the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry kindly update this House on how this government is working to attract more investment to Canada that will create well-paying jobs and spur economic growth? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll do that with pleasure, but let me first thank the member for his excellent work and for his hard-working attitude on this file. Mr. Speaker, we all know in this House that Canada is one of the best places in the world to do business, which is why I traveled to the EU recently to make the case for Canada as a premier investment destination for clean technology, the automotive sector, and EV batteries. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, I also met with our G7 counterparts to ensure that everyone can benefit from the new digital technologies that will drive innovation and growth in this country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, the horrendous killing of beloved Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh is unacceptable and blatantly violates the protection of journalists. The attack on her funeral procession by Israeli security forces a few days later was abhorrent. The world is outraged. The U.S., the UN, and the EU have called for an independent investigation. Will this government condemn these horrific actions and immediately join the call for a truly international, independent investigation?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would hope I speak for every member of this House to express the outrage that we all shared with the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. It was an outrage that affected our deepest sense of humanity as she was simply doing her job and she was killed. Our hearts are with those who are in her family, her friends, her colleagues, and those who mourn the loss of the work that she was doing. Canada calls for a thorough investigation into this killing, and it has to be one that people have confidence in its findings. We will continue to advocate for that, and we will ensure that the rights of journalists are protected this day and every day.
The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, today we're debating a government bill on electoral representation, but in it there's no mention of electoral reform or proportional representation. Back in 2015, the Prime Minister promised over 1,800 times he would make every vote count. 7 years later, and we still don't have any legislation or indication from the governing party that they will follow through on these promises. Will the federal government support an independent, nonpartisan National Citizens Assembly on electoral reform?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his continued interest in improving Canadian democracy. And Mr. Speaker, I would urge him to work with us to pass Bill C-14, as he correctly noted, which is before the House of Commons now, to ensure every province has the right representation in the electoral boundaries redistribution process underway. And Mr. Speaker, I know he's very excited to have the report from the Chief Electoral Officer on the most recent election. We share that excitement, and we look forward to working with all colleagues in this House to make elections more accessible in every possible way.
And that's all the time we have for question period today. I think we have a couple of point of orders. I see them all member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman. We'll go from there. We'll work our way around.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just draw to your attention, I'm sure you saw it, the member from Waterloo was in violation of Standing Order 16.2, which says when a member is speaking, no member shall pass between the member and the chair, nor interrupt him or her except to raise a point of order, and no member may pass between the chair and the table, nor between the chair and the mace when the mace is taken off the table.
in Section 3. So the member of Waterloo definitely crossed between you and the table when the Minister of Industry was speaking. And we need to maintain decorum in here, as you often try, and the member from Waterloo definitely upset the table today.
For the intervention, I believe the member for Waterloo has a comment on this.
Mr. Speaker, I did. I was in the way, but I would wish that the member would spend more time actually advancing legislation, improving the lives of Canadians, and raising these points of order. But I apologize for causing him such an...
Order. I just want to say, I mean, there are standing orders, there are rules of the House. We should not pass between me and the Speaker, the Chair and the Speaker, and of course the mace as well. So just let's all try to follow that practice. All right, we still have a couple more points of order.
The honourable member for Longueuil Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, there was consultations amongst the parties, and I believe you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That this House reiterates that Quebec is the sole master of its language policy and asks the federal government not to impede or restrict in any way. Sorry, I already hear nays. Yes, I hear nays. So the consultation was not done. I have the microphone.
Member for New Westminster, Burnaby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been consultations with other parties, and I believe if you seek it, you will find consent for the following motion. That the House express its horror at the hate-fueled mass shooting by a white supremacist in Buffalo, New York. Extend its deepest condolences to the families, friends, and communities who lost loved ones, and reaffirm the need to confront racism, white supremacy, and hate in all their forms.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion, please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Motion is carried.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House.
Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Also on a point of order, c'est au sujet de la question.
It's with respect to the unanimous consent.
The member for Louis Saint-Laurent had said several times that I opposed something which I had not opposed. I just want to put on the record, Mr. Speaker, that when there is consultation between the parties, there needs to be consultation. I not only didn't get advance notice, I didn't hear the member for Mégantic Arabe and what he said. I've expressed it to the member for Mégantic Arabe, and he understands. I'm sorry. This is not debate. This is a point of order because I've been denied unanimous consent on every non-controversial and sometimes deeply personal matters, such as being able to rise to pay tribute to my friend of 40 years.
Okay, all right. I want to make one comment before I recognize a few other people on this one. Unanimous consent motions are being abused in this House of Commons. Yeah. Motions used to be before question period, and a number of years ago the House adopted the form to actually use statements by members. I urge each and every one of the members of this House of Commons to use statements by members to get their points across, rather than using the unanimous consent motions as they're being used today. I can't stop it. It will continue to happen, I'm sure, but I do hope that we use them for the opportunity that they actually are to get unanimous consent of this House. Now, do I have any further? Good.
Following discussions among representatives of... No?
Would have had something to say there. That's good. I'm going to thumbs up him.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the shooting in Buffalo, New York. I now invite honourable members to rise.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. It being 3:19, pursuant to order made on Thursday, November 25th, 2021, the House will now proceed to take into the deferred recorded division on the motion by Mr. Chong relating to the business of supply. Call in the members. The question is the following one. Mr. Chong, seconded by Mr. Deltel, move that given that the House recognize I, the Canadian Chinese descent, have made immeasurable contributions to Canada. I, that the people of China are part of an ancient civilization and has contributed much to humanity. May I dispense? No. I, the distinction between the people of China and the Chinese state as embodied by the Communist Party of China and the government of the People's Republic of China. IV, that authoritarian states, including the People's Republic of China, increasingly pose a threat to the rules-based international order. The House appoint a special committee with the mandate of conduct hearings to examine the review of all aspects of Canada, People's Republic of China relationship, including but not limited to diplomatic, consular, legal, security,